All right. Hey, everyone, welcome. We've got Evan Herman back for round two because there was just way too much to talk about. If you haven't met Evan before, we've met, I think, when was it? When did you say it was? 2008 or 15?
2015, eight
20.
years ago.
All right. 2015 at an HR Tech and Shuram conference. I think that's what it was in Vegas or something like that, right?
Talent acquisition tech before HR tech in Vegas, 2015.
Awesome. And Evan has been a full cycle recruiter, a source, and is now doing consulting with companies on choosing the right tools, implementations, and finding out what actually works. So, anything else that I missed in there, Evan, or anything else you want for an intro?
And I do have a name for that service, by the way, on the vendor matching and
Yep.
selection. I call it TAP Intro, which
Tap
stands for
intro.
Talent Acquisition Partner. Think of me as an extension of your team, your talent acquisition partner, to help you troubleshoot and ultimately, to the extent that a tool might help solve your problems, match your problem with the right tool solution.
All right. I'm a big process guy. And I like to say this, you can't be effective at automation unless you have a process that can be automated, right?
Yeah, the stat comes from, I believe, Josh Bersin. 77% of talent acquisition spend is not used, or is at least not used to its full capability.
Capacity. And that's what we want to dive into here. What are some of the three or four things that a company should be thinking about in their process when they come to you? What are you seeing that works, and what do you see that doesn't work when they first come to you?
Sure. The first problem that I see out there is companies thinking of a solution first rather than identifying the problem they have. They're like, Evan, what are the best sourcing tools? It's hold
Yeah.
on. Yeah, it
Like,
depends.
what's the best ATS? Exactly.
Yeah, do you even have a sourcing problem? Or do you want to be part of that 77% statistic that doesn't use the tech that they're buying?
Yeah, got it. And so that's the prep, knowing what your outcome is, but being able to clearly identify it, but ideally like what you're trying to solve and who's on your team to do it and what your stack is now, like your technical stuff. What do you have and what you don't have? Um, is there anything else you would add into that?
Yeah, first off, I think in terms of tech portfolio, they all tie into each other rather than being separate. That's part of the problem. When you
Yeah.
think of things as separate, when they're actually all tied into solving your talent acquisition needs and problems, it's part of a portfolio and they need to be balanced out, not seen in isolation.
Yeah. So they're not all sitting on top of each other, but they have a specific purpose for the actual flow of that process of recruiting, depending on what that flow is. Right.
Okay, now you've identified the problem rather than the solution first. And now vendor selection is no different than recruiting and human and talent selection. Do you already have the solution in your existing tech portfolio and do you need a new tool? More often than not, probably not. You're
And
probably
and
not leveraging your existing solutions enough.
and it may be that you've got individuals in your company who may be on your team, in your HR team or in your recruiting team, that are great early adopters, and they're not getting the training, but maybe your ATS already does what you need it to do, but they just need to get trained or given the opportunity to do it. So that's in that same realm, right? Look inside what you got today and your resources, your people, not just the software, right?
Exactly. Yeah, look what you already have. Do you have the right people? Do you have the right personnel? Do you have the right headcount to actually adopt the existing or new tools that you choose to purchase? And then then even if you do have the right headcount, the right personnel on paper, do they actually have the right skill set, the right mindset? Do they have the availability to get onboarded with the new tool and actually adopt it to its full capability that you're purchasing it for? There's just a lot of factors other than just a tool being the best, technically wise, the best tool. There's a lot of other factors to consider.
And we talked about this in the green room too. So if someone was going to call you and say, "Hey, what's the best sourcing tool?" We talked about before, and yeah, and we joked about it too. You always see these posts on things. What's the best ATS? What that basically tells me is you don't know what your problem is first, because if you can't isolate or you can't say. It's a question that basically begs the question, why aren't you defining what your problem is first, and then saying what's the best solution to solve that problem?
Exactly. Yeah, you got to start thinking and looking internally first. And it's who says you need a new ATS? And you're just instead of asking what is the solution first, you need to understand what is my problem first.
Yep, yep.
What is
All
my
right, so
real problem?
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
eh,
maybe you don't have an ATS problem. Maybe more often than not these days you're stuck with Workday. So no matter what, even if the ATS is the problem, which it probably is if you have Workday, you're stuck with it. Finance calls the shots, you're stuck with it. So you got to find a workaround.
all right. Let me ask you. So, what are the biggest problems that you see when people come to you and start looking for, say, software? Say, as we talked about in the last show, we talked about sourcing tools. Where we identify the problem, and then we start saying, okay, let's look at software. But there's another side of that whole thing, which is the actual implementation. And we talked a little bit about, do you have the right people, like the sourcing team? Do you have somebody who's a sourcer? But what are other things that are happening in that process to say you buy something, to make sure the right person is using it, and is that the right vendor for you? Seen.
Yeah, in that respect, tool selection and software purchase is no different than the dating world. It's why, out of all the people seemingly undifferentiated, they seem so similar. You can watch the demos a million times. You can go to their websites, and you still like, how is Seek Out different from High Easy, different from Proven Base, different from Better Leap? It can be difficult to manage. And then, yeah, understanding you gotta it's a team effort to go after your original question on making sure it truly is the right team and are you ready for it. Don't I've been on the other end of a tool being imposed upon me and my colleagues. You got to include your team before you purchase. Get and not just like, here's your seat. You allow your vendor, they're your partner, okay? They're not it Don't make this transactional. During the trial period, let them get acquainted with your team. Let them get down and dirty. Let them learn at the desk, individual recruiter and individual recruiting desk level. What's your problems? How can we help? Here's how we believe our tool can help you. And if that happens, you'll have real buy in from your recruiters if you truly are evaluating the right solution,
Yep.
or you'll prove that it's not going to solve your problems. It's not the right tool. You save face, you save a bunch of money, and either way, you win.
Wow, that's really interesting because I've actually never heard many people talk about like the way you did.
Yeah. So most times when I'm getting involved, I'm coming to diagnose a problem. They're not happy. It may be their own fault, it may be the vendors, but either way, I'm coming ex post facto after the purchase. And yeah, in most cases, the sales team was not doing that. In most cases, they've only been a tech salesman, maybe not even specifically in HR at all or talent acquisition, let alone being an actual recruiter in almost no cases. And so they don't understand and can't possibly understand what is going on at the individual recruiter desk level on the front lines in the so-called war for town.
Okay, all right, this is great.
But they need to.
Yeah, and here's what I would propose. And I've been in this industry 28 years, and I've never heard people talk about it this way. I know, and I also do recognize that HR consultants are often paid to help in this model to understand the use cases and the process. And my brain's all about the process now. It's all about, if we're going to buy or build software, but it doesn't get used, and then who cares? It didn't solve an actual problem. And that problem is not just, hey, I need 5 engineers. The problem is the process. The software is a tool that helps the process. And the process is, we have to go find them. We've got to engage them. We've got to get them through, sell them, get them through interviewing. So there's multiple steps that happen along that process. And software should be able to help to automate that process. And
Yeah,
if you
you
just
need to
say,
you you hit the nail on the head because If you think of your problem as I need 5 engineers, now you're just thinking in terms of a short term solution and a transactional solution, not anything repeatable and certainly not anything long term. Let's
Yeah.
say, for example, let's say it's a large enterprise. So they have a team of 10 engineering recruiters. Okay. And each one needs to hire five. All right. So now you got your top gun. He figured out a way to use this new tool and it solved the problem with him. What good does it do if the tool only did it in one way at one time with that one recruiter? You need to find a way to streamline that, record it, develop it into a formal process, and spread that to the other 9 recruiters on that 10
Yeah, this is so great,
person team
Evan.
so they can fill their 5 slots using the new best practices.
Yeah, I talk about this all the time is you cannot automate something that you haven't written down. Like this is actually an organizational process. It's workflow process automation. And if you can say, oh, hey, look, Evan did a great job. He was able to hire 5 people with this tool. Why don't you sit down and just interview Evan on a phone with the Zoom or on Teams or on Slack and just say, Evan, would you just screen share and just walk through everything you just did? But maybe we have to do it a couple times. But
Yeah, you
is
hit
a
the nail
team,
on the head. In recruiting, good enough is not actually good enough. You want to repeat your top recruiter, your top gun. You don't want to recruit your middle recruiter. That you're good enough does the minimally good job. You should try and be mimicking the best recruiters out there.
yeah, that's the thing to me that is so important in this whole thing is that the average lifespan, I think, of a recruiter right now is 18 months at a company, more or less, right? And
And
it's totally
declining.
different. Yeah. And that means unless you, the TA leader, has a system of process, your process is walking in and leaving every 18 months. That's it. You don't have a process. You have software that you think is filling a process, but if we know the process, if we know we can say Evan is a star and this is his process that's working, then document it, own it, and then the next hire you're doing for recruiting is, could Evan follow this process? Maybe you don't need a superstar. Maybe you need someone who can actually follow what Evan did, and that's your process.
Exactly. Or let's be realistic. Odds are you're not going to turn that like underperformer into your top performer, your top gun guy that you're trying to repeat. But let's say they move from, to put a number on it and a percentage, to 100 being like, let's say they're that 40% recruiter. And just a little improvement, they could be, in 50% is minimally viable. They're good enough. If they gain just 10% of your top gun, that you're still winning.
You just
That's a
increase
25%.
20%. Yeah,
25%.
25% gain, right? Yeah, that's the interesting thing. And maybe it's a talent operations person. And I don't think everyone needs a talent operations, depending on your size. That's full time. But what's your process? And if you don't have the process, that's where a talent operations person would help build that process. And they don't have to be a full time employee. They can just come in, they can interview your team, they can look at your stack, see what they're actually using in it, and then just say what would be the best case for the company, and then lay out a plan. And then maybe it's a maintenance plan ongoingly with Evan or whatnot to solve it and to get the analytics working, to get the software working, to make it so you're getting the best use of your money. Maybe that's the solution that we're going to see more and more of. I'm in the mindset that's probably what we're going to see, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. Companies and talent acquisition leaders and their finance and tech partners need to rethink purchasing technology for talent acquisition specifically. When it comes to tech purchase for talent acquisition, your process is your outcome.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Hey, I'll leave it there. I know we've gone for a little while. How does everyone? How will? What's the best way for people to find you, Evan?
Sure. First best way is connect with me on LinkedIn, or if you're already connected to me, reach out to me directly. Otherwise, email me at evan.herman@hermanomics.com. Hermanomics is spelled without the E in my last name. That's HRMANOMICS.com.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Evan. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you guys all later. Thanks.